What's up? What's up, everybody? Welcome to F.L.O.W Presents. I'm excited for y'all to be joining us today because we got a brand new series, Woke. And of course, we got to ask the question, right? Are you too woke? Well, before we get into that, you know that we like to bring in some new elements. We got our new segment, Jesus Come Quickly, Cuz. So y'all get ready for it. Let's see what we got. All right, y'all. You know what we do. Jesus Come Quickly, Cuz. Who's gonna go first?
All right, I'll go first. Jesus come quickly, because if Tom Brady wins one more Super Bowl, I'm done. I'm over it. Okay? I'm over it.
I feel you. I feel you. This is what, number 7, right?
It's the heavenly number. Heavenly number.
Heavenly number. Okay? Retire. Go home to, what's his wife's name? Grizel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. Go home, enjoy your money, and leave the sport be.
Right.
It's not even fun anymore. It's just like, okay.
I gotta shout out Pastor Richard Martin because that's his team, man. That's his team, Tampa Bay. He's been waiting for years, a long time.
Well, you know, good things come to those that wait.
Amen.
Tom Brady.
What you got, Sandra?
I mean, I just got to bring up, second impeachment. Jesus come quickly, cuz like we're tired of all of this talk. Like, let's impeach the man. Let's, bring out the criminal charges and let's keep moving on and progressing. Like, I'm done.
Makes sense, but guess what? We know that he's not going to get indicted. So really, it's just formality. It's just a farce. Like we're all watching a show, just really to see how bad his lawyers are. But I got one for you. Jesus come quickly, because if Michael B. Jordan does another shirtless freaking commercial, okay, he's setting everybody back. I don't care how hard I work in the gym, okay? How hard I work in the gym. You can't be out here doing these kind of commercials.
He ain't said nothing back, sweetheart.
Right.
Come on, you make sense. How does turn off the light mean take off your shirt? Doesn't make sense.
I mean, it's interpretation. Like, that's...
Did you see the silhouette challenge?
Right.
Bye. Jesus come quickly. Because we're all out of challenges right now. Thank you. Y'all got any more?
I mean, I think we got to go with, like, the one everybody's been talking about this week, and Gorilla Glue Girl. Like, Jesus come quickly, because people don't know how to read the labels on products. Like, it is clearly for DIY home projects, crafting projects. It's not to lay your edges. Like, that's why you have gel. I mean, there's a whole Sally Beauty Supply store and everything else with 1,000,001 different types of gels of different levels to lay your edges, but not Gorilla Glue. I'm sorry.
I mean, thank you, Jesus, for that black doctor, though, that saved her here. His name Dr. Obang, I think. He did that thing.
Right, out in California. But then, everybody's been talking about this. We've seen her pain. We've seen this, pictures from TMZ and her surgery. And then this fool gonna go and be like, no, I don't think it's for real. Let me glue a cup to my upper lip. Like, I mean, is everybody just trying to be internet famous for doing dumb stuff? Like,
Chandra, that's a silly question. It's 2021. That is the quickest way to getting a good job is YouTube famous. But I got one for you. Jesus come quickly, because if Weekend is where we going for Super Bowl commercials, I'm all done.
I'm all done. Straps?
You said what?
I said Weekend and jock straps. Because what else were those things on those dancer faces?
No, man, it was the masks.
The whole concept had me blown.
The plastic surgery commentary he was trying to make or whatever.
I didn't understand. And I mean, first, like, we went from like this place where we had like Janet Jackson and JT, and then we got Beyonce. And then like when the J-Lo and Shakira did they thing because of the energy, but really the Weekend, like, what was happening? Then he holding the camera. I'm getting seasick sitting on my couch. because he's doing all this. You know what I'm saying? Like, yo, too much, son. Let it down. I'm too old for that.
I did appreciate the memes of that afterwards when people were like, me trying to navigate, X, Y, and Z public transit system, like going through, New York, DC, whatever.
Target after they rearrange the store.
Right, exactly. It's like where everything is in Target or whatever, and it's like, oh, brand new opening. You're like, wait a minute, where am I going? So, I think I appreciate the fact that we're just so ingenious, so creative, and you take something and then you just make a whole other life for it, continuing with all the memes and everything. So,
all right, well, I hope everybody out there, rocks with us. Like, what is your Jesus Come Quickly for this week? Please put it in the chat. We'd love to hear why you want Jesus to come quickly, because as we look at this world, a lot of ridiculous things are happening. And I got one more because I see somebody in the chat, so I got to make sure to show them some love. Jesus come quickly because people that are too soft for winter can't handle it. So I need Jesus to come quickly because they're starting to whine. They're getting a little too upset that they're getting a little snow and some frozen ice. So I need Jesus to come quickly to save them. Dang it, Simone. You're just going to put yourself in. That's you.
I am too soft for winter. No shade.
So let's hope Jesus come quickly to save those who can't handle it. But yeah, we love this segment. We love to hear from you guys out there in our community. Tell us why Jesus should come quickly. All right, let's keep it moving into the body of our conversation. Let's do it. All right, man, we are here to talk about being woke, but of course it's F.L.O.W Presents, and we always got to have our spin on it. So we're going to ask the question today. Yo, can you be too woke? What y'all think? Can you be too woke? Yeah, they both paused.
I mean, let's ask our general audience. Are you so woke you burn toast to make it racially acceptable?
Well, I mean, I don't even eat white bread, so
Okay. Are you so woke you don't wear a bra because it is oppressive and stifles freedom?
No.
Are you so woke you only drink chocolate milk? How woke are you?
There was another one that I read on somebody's Facebook, like, are you so woke that you don't pick the cotton out of the vitamin bottle to get to your pills?
Yo, I think it was CC that said it on my Facebook page, and I was like, that's too much. That's too much. I'm done. Too much.
I mean,
over it.
Push it to the side and pour it out. Too much work.
Before we break that into it, right? Let's really be honest. What does it mean to be woke, right? Like, kind of one, definitely for the audience, right? What is it? What is your definition of being woke? And for us here, as we chop it up, she said it's of the patriarchy. Did she say bras are of the patriarchy? All done. Show's over. I'm out. Really? We're trying to support you though, sis. We trying to support you. See what I did there? Okay. What does it mean to be woke though? Let's keep it real. What does it mean to be woke? What y'all think?
I mean, I think it's an awareness of, social injustices that are going on, and just understanding the context behind certain things and being aware of terms that are being used, what symbols represent, and how that impacts people in their daily lives. I think it's an awareness, but I think specifically around social justice.
Okay, so for you, Chandra, you're definitely looking at it from a social justice lens. That's what being woke is about. What you got, Simone?
Yeah, it's an awareness. It stretches beyond, at least for me, the racial, social category. There are different areas to be awoken in. Whether it's education, whether it's social injustices, lack of opportunities in the workplace. But usually when somebody says, are you woke? It has to do with your racial awareness.
I'm with you. I think you both define it what it is for me in a sense. Like I do think it's heavily social justice, but there's also this element really about any awareness to an issue that otherwise kind of goes unnoticed. And for me, I want to kind of start this conversation here because the concept of being woke, before you even get to being too woke, I think was embodied by the show Woke on Hulu. I really enjoyed that show because it animated this experience. And I felt like sometimes it's just like him. Like you go living your life, you're great, you're fine. And all of a sudden it's like you can't stop. Like you can't help but see everything but an issue. You know what I'm saying? Like the postman is like, yo, I love your black kicks. And you're like, what are you trying to say, cuz? Like my kicks too black? Like you trying to say something about my kicks though? Like my other forces are inside the closet. Like I feel like that's what it's like sometimes. Like you go from either being asleep in a sense to just being awake all the time. And that's exhausting on my end.
Yeah, I think it's about knowing where to draw the line. So I saw the first couple episodes of the show, and I feel as though, dude, I forgot his Keith.
Yeah, Keith.
Keith was I almost want to say he was a bit naive with life.
Mm.
He was one of those that like felt I'm doing everything I'm supposed to, so none of those other things will happen to me. So when he did end up in that situation with the police, it was like he didn't know what to do with himself because he was almost above, above that type of stereotyping or interactions.
Yeah, I feel that I'm sorry, Sean, go ahead, my bad.
No, I was going to say, I mean, I feel like that is very valid, especially for certain young people whose parents try and shelter them from some of these realities. And when they go, granted now we're in COVID, so a lot of universities are online or whatever, but like when you go away or you leave home to go to college or do something out on your own, it's like you don't have that shelter, that protection anymore. So you have to be aware of the realities of what life is really like. And so I agree with you, Simone. I feel like he was naive to that kind of perception that, he's a normal black dude walking with a bag, doing his thing. And then people are like, hey, it could be him. And all of a sudden things go left real quick. And he's like, what is going on? Mm-hmm. And so I think that there's a level of, you were talking about education, like we have to educate our young people about all of these things and make sure that there is that kind of balance between, being too woke, but also being completely naive and ignorant to what's out there.
Right. And there's that thing about being too woke because my cousin, she's definitely hosted on the show, asked me the question based on someone else's thought, like, does marrying a person outside your race, particularly a white person, like make it like you're giving consent to race, or what is it she said? Racism? Is it are you supporting white supremacy if you marry a white person? And I was like, yo, really? That's what that means? Like that's how woke I gotta be, that I can't like marry outside my race, or marrying outside my race automatically makes me complicit to this system that's been established for so long. Because I sometimes feel like that's where we gotta end up, right? Like I gotta keep it a buck with you guys. I feel like you go from either being asleep, but woke means you gotta suppress, like you gotta rage against everything in the machine. Like everything is broken. You know what I'm saying? Like it's black everything all day, all the time. Like, don't you dare, what is it, Killer Mike? Here's my thing. Killer Mike, when he tried to do something with the black dollar, in Atlanta, if you've ever seen that show on Netflix, Killer Mike does an experiment where he only tries to spend money in black-owned stores. Yo, get this. He was able to do 3 things: buy weed, go to the strip club, and I think he went to one corner grocery store. Like, that's how woke I think we're trying to be. And it's like, yo, you really living your life like that? Come on.
But he started basically like a banking business or bank with is Killer Mike, and I'm terrible with names, and like 2 or 3 other gentlemen.
And William is part of it too.
Yeah, he's like an investor, he's a promoter of it. But then like there are 2 or 3 older gentlemen that have, kind of that knowledge, that skill set of the banking industry behind them to kind of run and support this. So I never saw the experiment, but I'm wondering if this is, kind of what birthed that, is like because of that not being able to, have the money circulate. Like taking that example, if you look at sometimes like the Asian community, you can see where that money is spent and how it can kind of just circulate from within, right? And so if he was like, that's not happening, we need to create systems for ourselves, kind of taking it back. Like, are we going to have our own Main Street again, our own Wall Street again?
And Sandra, you speak to this idea though that I think what I look at sometimes being too woke is being in, like, it's like anti-action. Because I think woke leads you to a place of action, like a certain level of like involvement. But when I hear like some people I come across about being too woke, is they do like, I'm not gonna do that, 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 I'm not involved in that, that's too much. And it's like now you've got to a place where you've kind of disconnected from the very commute. Look, Simone, you look like you were stressed just in that deep breath just now. I don't know if it was like coincidental. I was like, dang, it's okay, sis. We trying to do better right now for everybody. But I feel that way. I feel like you get to this place where you don't do anything because everything is like supporting this particular system or that particular system. Even in churches, right? There's a certain level of disconnect that some Christians have with the church because now we're so woke. Like now we know that, that's not supporting of that group and that's not supportive of that group. So like we're getting it all, like all of it. We're all done.
Yeah. So we end up missing the supposed main purpose, right, of it all, because we are so we've become hypersensitive, right, to everything that's happening around us. So back to the point about like, are we supporting white supremacy if we get a spouse who's white or of any I can't even like formulate the words. It's Sabbath still, right? So I won't really say what's on my mind, and this is being aired, and I may want a job somewhere someday. But like, why can't you? I have no problem, right? If you meet a little white chocolate and I want to be with a little white chocolate, why not? Why can't I be with my white chocolate? If it's honestly that we just found each other, we flexing, things are cool, we just go with it. Where I do have an issue is where someone discounts their race and purposely goes for another race.
Okay. Yeah.
Those men who are like,
over the other.
Yeah, I don't date black women because they're this, and that. I don't do this, but I will that. I'm not for that. But you have a little white chocolate, you want to have a little jungle fever thing going on. Go ahead, do you have your little Mr. Softy swirl that comes out of it and everything? I'm all for it. I like white chocolate.
Okay, we just went there. So here's my question to the audience, right? As we talk about this, what are some signs of being woke? Like, are there some like basic tenets? As we're talking about what it means to be too woke, maybe it helps us to understand and define what it means to be woke. Like, how do you know that someone's really woke in any particular issue or any particular area?
So, like this is Black History Month. And so a lot of companies are doing different things to kind of promote Black history, Black businesses, Black love, Black stories, all of that kind of stuff. And working in predominantly a white industry, and I know different companies, they always feel like, oh, let me go to this token person to be like, well, what should we be doing? What should we do? And so my thing around that is like, is it too woke when you're like, nah, it's up to you guys to figure that out? Like, I don't, just because I'm Black, I don't need to be the answer to all your stuff. Or is it like, hey, let me take this opportunity to educate you on, what is what, so that you can then work collaboratively with others to kind of reach a certain goal and a mission, as opposed to like, well, we need to do something for Black History Month. So what do you recommend? What you want to do something like? What are you trying to put together? That's additional responsibilities.
I am triggered, Chandra. I am triggered because I used to be real irritated. Fun fact, I got to be careful because this is on Facebook and people may have watched it. Like, I worked in a particular place in Jersey, and it was like, yo, when you become the expert, because you're the only Black person there, that's triggering. And then I have to find that line to being too woke, because part of me wants to not answer any questions or not feel like I gotta support this. But then there's, to your point, isn't this an opportunity for education? Like, isn't this an opportunity to really draw attention to some things? And that's a really tough line for me, because I want to be too woke in that situation. Like, nah, I'm good. Nope, do whatever you want. But then I also can't get upset if they, highlight Dr. King, Rosa Parks, Malcolm X, and then they leave it there, right? They do 2 projects, they show 1 video, they talk about roots, and they keep it moving.
Mm-hmm.
It is a tension that I think is exhausting sometimes.
And then when they talk about Dr. King, they like to talk about the pacifists, the let's just kumbaya. But Dr. King got a little riled up there, right?
Yeah.
He reached a point where he was like, nah, this ain't gonna work no more. We got to do something else.
That's why I think that woke does have some level of action. And I keep thinking about that for me, but being too woke has this level of inaction. Like my big thing, like really in just bringing this conversation home, not home, but this idea of like where I wanted to really push our audience to think on this. The being woke is about encouraging change that's substantial. But being too woke, in my opinion, becomes antagonistic. And so then you are creating even more conflict. Like there is some level of friction that'll occur because you are challenging the system to think differently. But if all you're doing is getting the system to be entrenched even more in its beliefs, then you're too woke. Because now we're just 2 political extremes. Like now we're 2 opposite ends. Like it's not just church, now it's anti-church. Like nothing about church is good. Like, nah, not everything about church is wrong. Or not everything about white people, for example. Let's be honest, we got those friends that don't interact with no white person is good. The white person is the devil. And it's like, yeah, but I got a homeboy I grew up with. He's chill. You know what I'm saying? Like we rock all the time. Like I think he's gonna be my best man in my wedding type deal. But that 1 2 work person is like, nah, man, nah. They support the Klan. Like, nah, like he grew up on the block. You know what I'm saying? Like he got a black card too. We went in the same day and got registered. Like, cool.
But there's also they're so woke that they're actually they're in conflict with their own. Right? So because you haven't, it's Black History Month or African American Heritage Month or whatever they have renamed it now. If you're not acknowledging that every day on your social media, if you're not, drinking chocolate milk over the regular milk or whatever it is, then as a Black person, you almost get canceled because you're not woke enough. So they end up having, fighting against their own because you're not of that level, or you've been around the white man too much. You've been brainwashed. Now you're not one of us. So they like stand in this little place by themselves, just playing with their toys and nobody else because they're beyond.
Nobody wants to share the sandbox with them.
Yeah, basically.
Think about the term Oreo. There was a really good PD that was done recently at my job, and they brought the term Oreo. Who uses the term Oreo the most?
Blacks.
Yeah.
Right? But think about how damaging that term is. But somebody who uses that term might consider, I'm just thinking about your point. Sorry, my connection, Simone, is the idea of like, you're so woke that you're in conflict with your own people. Like the term Oreo is so demeaning and destructive and demonstrative, but we use it against our own people because we believe we're so woke. Like I can't help who's in my blood. You know what I'm saying? In some of the cases,
that's the thing is like, we don't accept people to just be who they want to be, right? Like it's like, there's supposed to be some sort of prescription as to what it means to be Black, and what that looks like. And so, I had this conversation with my mom over the holidays about specifically around music, because I was like, okay, we're different generations, but I appreciate the music that she grew up with. I appreciate classical music. I appreciate music from all different cultures, Christian, hip hop, reggae, like all of that kind of stuff. And then she was like, I just don't understand rap and this, that, and the other, and da 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 da. And I was like, but it's part of the culture. And she was like, not my culture, and I'm like, so we had this whole conversation because it's like, what does it mean to, to be Black? Like, why is there one prescription or one prescriptive kind of scenario as what that looks like? And so I think to your point, Rob, about the whole Oreo thing, it's like it is very, very demeaning, and people definitely will get in their feelings when they're like, hold up, who are you to tell me who I am, what I'm supposed to be like. Like if I want to go, I don't know, sorry, but like monster trucking or something, like, typically we associate that
I'm
with
judging you. I'm
with
judging
white
you.
people.
You're right.
Like if they want to do that versus like, oh, I want to go to the, I don't know, to the go-go, you know what I mean? Or whatever the case may be. It's like, why is there one thing, that kind of defines how we are?
And this, oh, sorry, Simone, go ahead.
No, I was just saying it's true. I was having this discussion with my students the other week about the whole thing of like an Oreo and what does it mean. It was in a book that we were reading, and they were saying, it also depends on where you were raised, right, and how you were brought up. So this hood mentality, if you weren't brought up in the hood, then you weren't going to understand certain things. You're not going to speak a certain way. If you grew up in the suburbs, if you grew up in a rural farm town in Virginia, you are going to see things differently than those who grow up in Baltimore or New York City. And so I think it's more than race. Like even the kids were saying that it's not really about a black, oh, you speak black, you speak white, because if you live in a certain place, then you're going to speak as those who come from that area, right? Because I know we all got that white boy that when he comes out, if your eyes are closed, you're gonna be like, "Ooh," right?
Simone, I want to hang my hat on that term about so woke that you're against your own people. And looking at what you were talking about here, this idea of defining what black is and defining what it is, because I think being woke is about helping push this idea of equality and not dominance. And I do believe that some people believe in dominance. You look at the difference between X and King. X was like, look, I'm cool with separation. Like, give me my own country, give me my own place. But there's something in me that feels that leads to such a staunch division that if you don't have the power to reinforce that, then you really just set yourself back a little bit. Because that's what white people do. Like they're trying to, they want to be separate. They want to prove that there needs to be oh, sorry, that's not true. I said whites. The push of white supremacists is this idea that there needs to be separation, that there needs to be this distinct, clear division between us and them, because that already exists. When we recognize the reality is there are a lot of comparisons, there are a lot of things that make us similar than there are different. And it's this idea of, for me, I just want to be equal. Like, I need you to see me as having the same value as yourself. But being too woke sometimes is like, well, I'm gonna do what they do then, right? Like, it's all about us. We don't got the power yet. We getting there. Don't get me wrong, that's a part of the mission, but we getting there. But when you spend so much time now trying to fight every small battle, is my thought. Like every small battle, every small thing, you don't have the resources that they do. And so I think we kind of lose sight of the overall mission and take away from what I think it really means to be woke, which is bring awareness to those issues.
Go ahead, Sandra.
I was going to say, I think too, the idea that this is a pie, right? Like because somebody has a larger piece, there's going to be less for others. And so I think there's that misconcept there. And that's what I think the white supremacists are pushing. It's like, for them, their idea is that if blacks get more power or if they have more money or more businesses, then whites are going to have less. That's not how it works. Like that has, since the beginning of time, that has never proven to be the truth, right? So it's like we have to be able to shift that mindset and that mentality in order to understand, like Rob, to your point of like, there's enough for everybody to go around and then some, right? Like there's enough to have plenty left over and everybody get their piece and be happy and do their thing and whatever. And I'm not saying we don't live in a kumbaya type situation, but I think there's that level of threat, and as we are starting to see certain changes being implemented in Confederate flags coming down, statues coming down, companies changing the names of brands because of, the racist, and that kind of stuff. Like, those are things that are happening. And so that's kind of stuff that we see. It's surface level, And I think the real change then starts to become when we see policy changes and
Yep.
things that were like specifically put in place from back in the day, like redlining and all that kind of stuff that has institutionalized a sense that where we don't even have, the decks are like this and we're trying to get here. Right. And so it's like once we start to see those policy changes and we can have generational wealth among the Black community where we can, we don't have to worry about like different credit scores and, all that kind of stuff and getting different lending practices because of the color of our skin, then that's when we can have, a true level of like, I guess, equality or, at least have better conversations.
Yo, Simone, before you jump in, let me read this quote from Obama, 2019. Obama said, this idea of purity and you're never compromised and you're always politically woke and all that stuff, you should get over that quickly. He went on to explain the world is messy. There are ambiguities. People who do really good stuff have flaws. People who are fighting may love their kids and share certain things with you. He also said, I lost my track a little bit, that woke led to cancel culture. Summarizing that as a long quote, that he said being woke, right? Being too woke led to cancel culture. And look at what happened. There are some companies that can withstand it and there are others that can't. But I think about what happened with H&M. Now, the H&M thing reminds me of what happened, a Trevor Noah skit that you shared with us, Chandra. But, H&M did the whole monkey thing, right? The Monkey Kings. And we were like, yo, that's offensive. That's racist. Cool. But then it was like, yo, dead H&M. H&M is like, no one go for it. We didn't think about the black people working at H&M. We didn't think about the Black communities that H&M's money may have been funneling. It's this idea of they made a mistake or, they did something that wasn't racially appropriate or acceptable. Dead them. Like, what do y'all think about that? This idea that the woke culture, I think, leads to cancel culture or influences cancel culture.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it goes back to my point earlier about the infighting, right? And those who are so woke, not wanting to be or associate with their fellow Blacks who are not as woke, who are not wearing a dashiki every time they leave the house, who do not slather in shea butter once they come out the shower, and all these other things. So I agree. It does lead to cancel culture. But before you go on, there was something else, Rob, that you mentioned about the equality, and I'm gonna take it to church for a minute. Does Christianity prevent us from being too woke?
It should. I don't think it does. Like, I'm looking at this comment here. Being separate is not necessarily by CAF 23. Being separate is not necessarily a bad thing. Asians and Jews show this. And I'll say it doesn't, the word necessarily is what's operative there for me in connecting it to your Christianity. The Bible actually encourages us to be apart. Like, he tells us that there is some level of separation that's necessary, but there's also some level of inclusion that's necessary, some level of being in the mix. And I tried to do this before, but I stunk at chemistry. So I want to shout out to the future Dr. Stewartson. But this idea of like, there's a mixture, right? Where something maintains its form and shape and identity, but is a part of a whole. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what Christianity acknowledges, this idea that like, hey, I can acknowledge and see you as a whole being, as a human. Please be a part of this group by acknowledging that. I think there's some idea that I want to cancel your existence. I want to cancel your ability to have choice and representation and identity in this space. And I think that's not what Christianity promotes, but people will say so.
And that's why I think some of them leave Christianity.
Ooh, say more.
Because Christianity wants us to come together, right? And we're all working towards the same goal. And we should see our brother and sister as, a fellow follower of Christ. But they don't see me like that. This is my woke voice. They don't see me like that. So why should I pay attention to them? So I don't want to be a part of an organization or a religion that tells me I need to like someone or love someone who doesn't love me. So
And
they end up leaving Christianity and finding religions that speak more to their wokeness.
And so that's why you asked me, can Christianity prevent you being from too woke? Yeah, and I think it does, because being too woke, I wonder how healthy is being too woke. As we said earlier, it's exhausting to live with that level of awareness. And I'm gonna be clinical right now. Like, somebody who is that hyper aware essentially is suffering from PTSD. Your brain is not meant to be on all the time. Like, it is not. Hypervigilance can lead to a level of stress that wears the body down. So to me, being woke is you got to see everything, right? Like, what did he just say? Do I want paper or plastic? What are you trying to say, Chief? I have two options here, sir. I have a paper bag and I have a plastic bag. Which one would you prefer?
Would you offer this to me if I were of a lighter complexion, or is it because I'm darker and you don't think that I'm good enough to get the paper bag? Why couldn't you just give it to me? Yeah. Okay.
I know we've seen it. I know we've seen somebody engage in a conversation where on the cuff we're like, I don't think that's what they were. Like, maybe I'm not woke enough, but I'm pretty sure when he asked you if you want the vanilla or chocolate ice cream, it's because those are the options that they have. Like, he wasn't trying to see what side you were on in life. Like, that's all.
No, quick story though. Last year at my school, we do this thing called Random Acts of Kindness Week, right? So we have a day.
Ooh.
We have a day where we do where we have like a ice cream station in the cafeteria. So we usually do the vanilla chocolate, strawberry. They can do toppings and all of that. It's available to everyone. And my coworker was telling me how the one, we have very few colonizer children in the school, right?
Children.
And then one of them came up and was like, what flavor do you want? He's like, oh, vanilla ice cream. So he said, they're like, okay, fine. You want vanilla? He's like, yeah, it's the superior flavor, right? They're like, boy, you don't look around at the other 600 non-colonized kids that are in this building right now.
But like, isn't that too woke though? Like, I think vanilla is a dope flavor.
It wasn't the fact that he wanted vanilla. It was the fact that he said it was a superior flavor that got.
I mean, but can't that be the truth though? Like, to your point, the too woke person is also going to read into this idea that he's trying to speak white being dominant. But what if my man is just talking about the vanilla ice cream? Okay, like if vanilla ice cream looked pink but had the same taste, he might have said the same thing. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm trying to say. But yeah, we got to talk about this right here, man. At Miriam Ogalo says, I think that Christian denominations founded in the U.S. were unfortunately tainted by white supremacy to some extent. I think there's some relevancy to that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
What do y'all think is the impact of that, though?
What's the impact?
Yeah.
Regional conferences within the SEA context. I don't like to shout out my home denomination like that, but it's true.
Yeah. Because the churches are founded on, like, they're within the society, right? They're not excluded from the society, so therefore they operate in the same way in which the society that they're in is operating. And so segregation was there, so churches were segregated. Like, it's not, it's not as if there wasn't that influence of white supremacy, then there would never have been this idea, as you said, for the SDA church, the conferences and all this other kind of stuff. Like, everybody would have been together kumbayaing since the beginning of time. But that was the case because there was two different Bibles. There was the slave Bible, there's the Matthew, all of that. So it just continued to perpetuate.
Right. And it's existing in a society, American society, that is built on a racial construct. Yeah. So that is going to be a part of who we all are. When I'm in America, when I'm doing business in New York, when I'm walking around the streets, I have a different mindset than I do when I'm home in Jamaica, because race isn't a thing down there. I could walk into any store. I don't have to worry about some of the things that I do here, like walking into some place and people are following me around, or they're asking me if I need help when I'm good, but because of the color of my skin, or those types of things. And it trickles into everything that we do. So if you have leadership that is white and grew up in America and its racial construct, they are going to think a certain way. We saw that last year with the letters that came out from GC, right?
Very
Referencing George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, or the lack of names that were used around those situations. And I think it would have been very different if the president had been homeboy from Europe, Paulson, who grew up in a different culture and therefore saw race differently.
So let's talk about that, because I'm gonna follow this thread. I don't know how serious this person is being in the chat, but they asked this question, right, about the vanilla situation. I think it's a great one. I think it's a simple example that we can really dissect towards the end of this, right? Where did he learn the word superior from? I feel like that question is rational in a sense, but I also think it's a too woke question, because like, we are all impacted. There was somebody, there was a really smart person. I wish I knew their name to validate this. But there was somebody that said this idea that we all are impacted by the white supremacy culture. Like all of us. Like it is an umbrella that covers all of America. Mm-hmm. And think about the fact that we have to question this young man's legitimacy over ice cream to an extent because we live there. Like there's an impact on him and us that I think sometimes being too woke ignores. Like, so, because we tend to then come at this with this energy of like, oh, you trying to say something? It's like, no, I just really like vanilla ice cream though. And I think the word supremacy, right, or superior is a vocabulary word that denotes my level of interest or my level of domination to chocolate ice cream. But because we are all impacted by white supremacy, what we're all impacted by this culture, we are therefore then looking at this with a different lens that I think creates a level of friction if we all can elevate our consciousness to a degree. Does that make sense? I feel like I was trying.
Yeah. But I mean, I think because it is inherent in our society and ingrained in our society doesn't mean that we have to continue to allow it to be, as this person says, baked in, right? Like we have to start to deconstruct this and then reconstruct anew, I think. And so that comes about through this level of awareness, this level of conversation, changes, that happen. But it can only happen when people actually are willing to come to the table.
But how can people come to the table, Chandra, if they feel like our ideals are already like resisted against? Like we are assuming, again, just using this lovely example, is the kid who comes to the table, like, will this kid come to the table? Because you've already made the assumption that one, he's equating vanilla to whiteness, that two, he's using the word superior to denote a sense of overall superiority. Like, why should I come to the table if you've already made these assumptions about me?
I mean, I can't answer that. It's a level. It's a level of willingness, I guess. Like just to be able to have a conversation and to try and fix and change. I remember I was listening to this clip from a radio show, and this guy was from the Deep South, and he was a racist, hardcore. His family was in the KKK, but he went off to Vietnam, and he was basically telling this whole story about how there was another guy that was there as a black guy, and they got into it in the very beginning, and they did not like each other. Mm-hmm. But because of during war, certain things happened where the black guy ended up saving his life. He ended up saving the black guy's life. They developed a friendship. And then when they moved back to the States, they began, that friendship continued to grow, and they influenced each other to go back to school, to get master's degrees and all this stuff. And now the white guy is married to the black guy's sister, and they live 5 minutes from each other. The kids play together, like all this kind of stuff. And so it was like, he was like, you couldn't tell me that white people weren't the best thing in the world and all this kind of stuff. And it was because he was forced into this situation of closeness that he had to rely on somebody that he had been taught for so long was inferior, didn't matter, who ended up saving his life and different things. And they began a dialogue, and lo and behold, they're best friends, and now they're related, through marriage and kids and stuff. So sometimes we have to be forced into those uncomfortable places and into those uncomfortable situations to begin those conversations.
I agree. I mean, there's a comment there that says, by Calf, we saw it up there, that it's not tainted. Supremacy is baked into these institutions. And so I use that as my lens to say how I approach the table, like who can come to the table, because I recognize that we all are influenced by it. And so sometimes, here's my radical statement. I'll be ready to take everything in the chat. My radical statement is sometimes white people, white children, particularly white people, because it depends on the age, are also ignorant of white supremacy and its impact. We think they shouldn't be because America is, but I think sometimes they are. And so how being too woke can sometimes make them resistant because we come off the cup and say you're a racist and they're like, I'm not a racist. It's like, let me try this differently. You are complicit in things that are racist by the very fact that you're white.
Yeah.
The too woke, and it's just that change in things makes the table approachable.
Yeah.
I think too woke, when we talk about being too woke, you just come at it like they're already trying to be against you or against us as a people. And it's like sometimes they are just benefiting from the fortune that they were born white.
Yeah.
In America, particularly in America, white in America.
Yeah. And it's an awareness,
Yeah.
right? So the person who is now so woke wasn't born that way.
Mm.
They were taught, whether by their parents or other individuals, they read on their own. It was a learned behavior for them as well. And so, and for the white person who may not realize their privilege, because there are a number of them who simply don't recognize the privilege that they have because they were born with it and they weren't taught differently. I have a friend from graduate school, white girl, Sarah, shout out to her all day. She told me when we were in school, and I came from growing up in New York, I was still very like sheltered. If you were like Black or Jamaican to be in my circle, because that's how church was for me, that's how going to school was. And we were walking to the train station one day and she says to me, she doesn't date white guys who don't believe in white privilege. So that's like one of her first questions. She's like, do you think white privilege is a thing? And if they say no, that's it. No second date. Because she's like, she refuses to be with somebody who is going to be like complicit with the segregation that's happening and the inequality that's happening in America. She needs to be with somebody who is aware. And I was like, huh, what is this white privilege thing? Because it's not really a term that I was used to at the time. This is years ago. And then I came back and I was like, yo, this is a real dope chick. Like, and we're friends to this day because she stands up for what is right. It's not about, and she knows how to use her privilege, which is another thing.
Yeah. I think that's dope. And I was just going to say, like, I think that's one thing is like, first understanding that you have white privilege. It's inherent. It's just there, right? And then secondly, how do you use it though? And so I think that's the key in terms of how is that being used in your everyday interaction and stuff. And so with your friend, that she kind of brings that level of awareness into like her dating life is another, I think is dope.
And I think the same thing is said about being woke. Because I think there's also some level of responsibility that the woke person has in that the white person has white privilege. Being woke is an awareness to deeper issues that other people may not be. And it's important to manage that power well in order to lead to more awakenedness. I'm just going to start making up words. I love it. And I'm looking at some of the things in the chat, like this comment here, I want to address this. You shouldn't have to teach everybody everything.
I agree with the girl that's in a second about teaching.
Yeah. Let me bring in my Christian part. You shouldn't have to, but there is a responsibility to knowledge that I think we'll all be held accountable to. And I'm saying that as a Christian, like there's a certain level of responsibility to knowledge that we'll all be held accountable to at the end of time. Yeah. Like it's kind of like if you knew better and you had the opportunity to educate somebody, because we all have a sphere of influence. Now, my thing is, if I make the attempt to educate you and there is some reticence to you being educated, cool, right? Because I put the information out there, you didn't want to receive it, peace.
Yeah.
To fall on the fact of the exhaustion of having to educate people, I think can be a type of cop-out. I'm not going to say this because there is I want to acknowledge the exhaustion that we all feel, particularly as Blacks. But I also think like those in the civil rights felt exhausted and they still pushed.
Yeah. It's exhausting, but you know, not everyone is Rob said. We have a sphere of influence, and not everyone is influenced the same way. It is exhausting for me as a teacher to have to tell kids how to write their address in high school.
Stop it. You're
Right?
kidding.
Like your address includes, and I have to break it down. What's your address? 161 in Grant Avenue. That's not an address, sweetheart. Okay. The post office cannot send anything to 2 Cross Streets. So why? Why now in high school do I have to break it down? What's the numbers on your building or house? Okay. What is the name of the street that your building is on? Okay. City and state. Okay. New York City, New York is your mail's not going to reach anywhere. Right? That's exhausting. Parents should have taught them that, but guess what? Their parents didn't. So now it becomes my responsibility. And I think that's what happens to us as well. Like, not everyone has that experience. Not everyone has those individuals to tell them certain things. So when they come across someone who has a bit more information or who's like, you know what, this isn't really a terminology we use anymore, you know, like colored isn't acceptable, even for my Black people that are 80 years old, right? The little old man at my church is like, "Good colored people." That is not a term we still use.
But you can't tell old people nothing. Like they'll be like, look.
But it's about right? It's about the sphere of influence. Like, who are they around? Who is telling them that we've moved on from colored, right? We're like 3 words ahead of that now. Somebody had to help them.
I want to address this because I shout out to at Aaron for being transparent with her feelings, and I actually want to support that. Teaching people things also traumatizes you. It's not just a disturbance of peace, and I will say that statement is true if you are still in a traumatized state. Right? You can only teach from a place of being healed. I would even say you can't even really teach from a place of healing. Like if you're still healing, it may not be safe because you can re-damage the wound. You need to teach from a place of being healed. And I think that's something that as a people, we have at times neglected because of the stress of the work. Like, let's be honest, like we have neglected seeking to be healed because the work is continual and we need to do it. But that's when we lead to exhaustion and we lead to re-victimization. Like the only like women support groups, right, are led, or even alcohol support groups are led by somebody who has made it far enough in the alcoholism. Like I can't still be like tipsy coming into the group. Like I think I'm not gonna help nobody. And I think the same thing is said here. So I actually think at Aaron Stewardson is absolutely true. I don't think that Black people get a chance to heal. Ooh, okay, she's talking about stuff. Okay, there's some stuff going on. So
and then a Robert comment is like healing continual process.
Okay.
I agree with both sentiments. Like I feel like it's very true that it is everything that we do is a process. And as Rob, to your point with the whole, the AA thing, it's like once you get to a certain level, are you then able to lead out a group? Are you then able to teach? And then there's somebody ahead of you that is helping you get to their next level. And so we have to. It's not an individual thing. And I agree. Like it is tiring. It is exhausting, always trying to teach people something else. But also we don't always necessarily have all the answers, so sometimes it's like, I got to go out and do my research so then I can teach you about this. Like that's extra work for me. So, but it could be like, hey, maybe we learn together, but it's a process for sure.
I got it. Cause Araba, I love what she says that healing is a continual process. And it's almost like Dr. Araba probably has so much wealth of knowledge in this area. The reason I said you have to teach from a place of being healed is, let me say, like the wound can't be readily open. Like there may be some internal stuff that are being done. You may be still like, if it's like a hip injury, right? Like you can now walk quickly. You can maybe even jog, but you can't sprint anymore. Like, but you're still able to teach somebody else how to get to that place. But if the wound is still fresh, if the wound is still open, then no, I don't think you should be teaching. Because I think you will leave yourself open to re-victimization. And I also want to, but I'd love to do this to Araba in a good conversation. I wonder if when we say healing is a continual process, maybe not for today, this may not be for today's show, do we prevent ourselves from ever being healed? Like if we settle on the idea that healing is a continual process, and I don't know if she's saying this. I'm reading into things that are not being said. Like, is there ever a point when we can say we are healed? Is just something I'm thinking about for maybe our other show. But yeah. First of all, shout out to everybody who has kept the chat live. We appreciate it. We love it. As you see, we try to include your thoughts in it, but we got to make some connections. So let's
hold on. Before you make the connection, I have one final thing. I need to ask. I need to ask this.
I don't want to know.
There is. I identify, and I'm being serious here. I identify as Black, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I understand there's a new term that people are using. Am I not woke because I don't identify as ADOS?
I'm sorry. Can you help me? Can you help me out?
Oh, apparently it's a term being used now. It's called American Descendants of Slavery. So I wouldn't identify, I guess, because I am not an American descendant. So I'm okay being Black. But people don't want to be called Black anymore. I've been in conversation with people on social media who are like, I don't identify as Black. I'm ADOS. And I was like, what does Adolf have to do with any of this? Like, why does anybody want to be with Hitler? But then it's like ADOS, right? ADOS. But it's the
then are white people ADOC? American descendants of colonizers? Like, I mean, how far are we going to take this? Like, I mean, seriously, like, obviously slavery we are still living the trauma of slavery. I'm not debating that, but I think there has to get to a level, and I'm not saying a level of like, let's move on, never, right? Because you don't, just like, the Jews never forget the Holocaust, like we should never forget slavery. Like, it is baked into what is America. It is how America came to be. But yeah, I don't know, because somebody was talking about like we shouldn't say slavery, we should say the enslaved, because then it put, like changing all of these terms and doing all of that. I don't know how to answer that question. Like, are we too woke? Are we taking things too far? Are we there?
Being Black then? I'm good.
Yeah, I mean, I say I'm Caribbean American. I'm Black. I'm like.
And technically, you should say American Caribbean, but anyway, that's a whole other thing.
American Caribbean American.
If you were oh wow, we at the time. But my thought is, like, I was born here, and my heritage is from Caribbean. So really, I should really say I'm American Caribbean.
Okay, I see your thought process.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah.
But yo, I do want to shout out to Araba who's in the chat, man. We want to get you back on because we know Araba is studying Africana studies, pursuing a doctorate in Africana studies, I believe. And we also want to this is a general announcement. If you are interested in sharing your thoughts and in pushing a conversation forward, let us know. We want hosts. We love the dialogue in the chat, but we also want to see some of your faces and really get in conversation with you, because we believe that all of your feelings and points are valid, and we genuinely grow through discourse. But like I said, let's make the connection. So let's roll it. So what's the connection? Who wants to go first? No? Okay, cool. I got it. Cool. The connection for me is what Simone said. And it's the idea of, if you are so woke, if you are so aware of issues that you are now actively fighting against your own people, I beg you to ask and consider, have you maybe lost focus? Right? Like, my whole thing, the connection is keeping focus on the goal, on the mission. And I think whether it's in Christianity, whether it's in racial issues, whether it's in social justice issues, I do believe that it's about moving forward and getting us to a place of equality. I mean, we talk about equality or equity. I want to say equality, equal access to resources and materials. And if your wokeness is preventing that for whatever reason, I beg you to consider maybe you are too woke.
I agree. I'm at a place in my life where it's about learning. And so I want to engage with individuals who are willing to learn as well. So let's learn and build together. I'm okay with not being too woke, but I want to be woke enough that I can wake up somebody else.
Okay.
That's
Yeah,
it.
I agree with all of that. I think same thing about learning and teaching, but getting to a point of action. So I'm at that stage of like, okay, what are the next steps? How do we get to that level of equal access and opportunity? And what does that look like? And if you're in a position to be able to do that, like if you're a hiring manager, you know, everybody's talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion in these companies and all that kind of stuff. So if you're a hiring manager, like, are you hiring more women? Are you hiring more Hispanics? Are you hiring more Blacks? You know, like what is in order to kind of have that level and to create that sort of change. So, yeah.
Appreciate it. I want to thank you guys for being in this conversation with me. For the next 2 Saturdays of this month, we will be continuing this conversation of woke. But guess what, everybody out there? You know, F.L.O.W has been continually trying to build on its platforms and its levels of engagement and its opportunity for access. So here's the thing. When it comes to the weekend, if you are a Christian trying to grow as a whole person, we got it for you. Starting on Friday evenings for the next 9 weeks, we're actually partnering with another church, Seabrook, SD in the area, to talk about Adulting 201. I'm going to tell you right now, adulting is hard, okay? Hard. I can't wait to get onto the other side. If this is like I'm talking, no, not death, not death. Come on.
So I'm like, we're continuing to adult no matter to the very end. So what's the other side? What is the other side?
Heaven, right? And there's no issues.
Okay.
But also, I hear that there's this place in life where you're not necessarily adulting anymore, but you're kind of enjoying the benefits of having adulthood. The investments come through, the satisfying. And it's tough talking to y'all people. But yeah, on Friday evenings for the next 9 weeks, we're going to be exploring Adulting 201. So join us. It is on our Sabbath School link or chat. If you are unaware, there it is right there. You can definitely connect with us through that resource. Fridays, we talk about the word, but we're also covering adulting. And then Saturday morning or Sabbath morning, we break into Sabbath school, right? We're trying to give you food for your soul. Okay, we really dive into different topics that are relevant to young adult life, and we explore it from a biblical perspective. So you got that, and then you got us at 4:30, right? And we're gonna talk about it all. And this February, we're talking about being woke. So on the weekends, if you're looking for something to put on in the background, something to encourage your thinking process and push you in new areas, join us because F.L.O.W weekends are where you need to be at. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. We need it. You know, in this day and age, those are the numbers that speak, right? Your likes, your subscriptions, and how often you're shared. That's the monetary. That's the money that speaks. So help us in that area. Appreciate y'all, and we'll see you next Friday.
Peace.